Thanks very much for this invitation. And as the title suggests, I would like to talk about random walks, bacterial motion, and a particular type of bacterial motion called as twitching motility. So it is a kind of a mixed talk, which has some introduction as well as a research part at the end. So I hope you will enjoy it, and please interrupt me anytime if you have any questions or if anything is not clear. And you can see, what kind of research our group does on IIT Delhi Physics Department website, and this is my name. So the plan of the talk is as follows. I will talk a little bit about random walks. Then I will go to twitching motility. I will discuss about it. I will tell you how we model twitching motility, and I will also talk about twitching bacteria in corrugated channels, and do you get any directional motion, etc. I will show you some results, and then I will end with summary. So I'm sure everybody knows that Robert Brown in 1827 observed this agitation of pollen grains in a medium, probably water, and he saw that this jittery motion of these pollen grains under a microscope, and he was not able to really say anything about them, and he was not able to understand why this is happening. So he did lots of things, like he frozen those pollen grains, then he heated them, and still he saw this agitated motion, and he noted it down, but he was not able to give any explanation for this. After several years, of course, a lot of people worked on this, but the first correct explanation or a theory was put forward by Albert Einstein in his famous 1905 papers. And the name of the paper is On the Motion of Small Particles Suspended in a Stationary Liquid as Required by the Molecular Kinetic Theory of Heat. And you will be able to see this paper, which has been translated from German in this. There is a small book by these two fellows. You should be able to, some wondrous years or wonderful years or something like that. And Einstein was the first to give the theoretical description for Brownian motion, and he also explained, gave empirical evidence for the atomic theory supporting the applications of statistical physics. So as you know, the Brownian motion occurs because these suspended particles are of micrometer size, and they get bombarded by other medium molecules randomly, and that's why you see this jittery motion of these particles. Then the first experimental evidence, basically from using the theory, for the theory of Albert Einstein, came from Jean Perrin in 1910 or 1920s sometime, and he actually did this experiment using a microscope, counting the number of particles seen in a given area under this microscope, and he wrote a very nice paper in Annals de Chimie, and this has been translated in Brownian Movement and Molecular Reality. It's a beautiful book. It's available online. If you just search this book's name, you will be able to get it. So he actually did this experiment, and he was able to prove basically what Albert Einstein had predicted in his theory. And for this, he got the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1926. So if you see, almost after 100 years of first observation of these pollen grains, somebody actually got a Nobel Prize in Physics, because it was of fundamental importance. And also as a result, this was a beautiful experiment which was done by Perrin, and he actually also found out the Avogadro number using his experimental data. So you should be able to, you will enjoy this book if you get time. So around that time alone, when 1905, Einstein's glorious years, around that time, somebody called Carl Pearson, he was a professor in UK somewhere. So he proposed this problem in Nature issue, that if I start at point O, if you see the figure on the left, then this a particle or a fellow takes a step of length L, And then when it takes a step of length L, he again can choose an angle between 0 to 2 pi, and then take a step of length again and keep on doing this. And after, let's say, n steps, what is the probability that this particle is found between r and r plus dr around the circle from the starting position O? And this was his problem. And within probably a week or so, Lord Rayleigh replied by saying that this actually is related to some isoperiodic vibrations of unit amplitude and phases distributed at random, and was published in this. So completely different problems. So this problem, which was proposed as a random walk, but it's got connected to something completely different, which was related to a something random, but something like amplitude. So this kind of a walk is now famously known as Pearson walk, and a lot of studies have been done in this. So we will come back to this Pearson walk at some point of time, but this was just an introduction to how this actually all this random walk business developed. Okay, so I will show you some movies. Hopefully I will be able to. So what this movie shows is some nanoparticles embedded in liquid, and you see this jittery motion, and this is basically Brownian motion. I'm sure you have seen this at some point of time, and it's not a very difficult experiment to do. You probably have very fancy microscopes to do this as compared to what Robert Brown had. And you see this all sorts of jittery motion. And one thing to note is that it's completely random, right? So you cannot predict where the particles will go in the next step. So it's completely random. On the other hand, in this movie, you will see these E. coli bacteria, which are basically moving around. And what you will see that they kind of do a small random walk, and then suddenly go in a particular direction. Particularly, if you see this bacteria, he will basically go in direction, and then he will do a random walk. So they kind of do a very different kind of motion as compared to Brownian motion, and this is called as run and tumble motion. So they run, so they basically go in one direction, and tumble, so they don't know, they are not sure where to go, so they will do a small random walk, and after a while they will basically do again a straight line directed motion. So this motion of bacteria is completely different as compared to the Brownian motion that we just saw. The next video is about a bacteria which basically moves by changing its shape. As you know, these bacteria, even if they are in water, the inertial effects are completely gone. So even water is very, very viscous for them. So it's like for us moving or trying to swim in a bath of honey, right? Which is or in a very viscous medium. So we'll not be able to push the water back as we would usually do while swimming. And then this bacteria had to employ some different kind of techniques, and this is something called as shape changing, right? So they change their shape and try to propel themselves. This is the same reason why cats actually, if you throw them, not of course from too much height, they will always land on their feet. Okay, so this is because they change their shape while they are falling, and they can land. So a motion here of this bacteria and a cat landing on its feet is very, very similar. Another bacteria which I will be talking about is called as the Neisseria gonorrhoeae, which is a human pathogen, and it transmits deadly diseases to humans. And this is basically two spheres connected to it, and we will talk about this. And you will see that these different bacteria, there are millions and millions of bacteria, and they show completely different kind of motion. So it gives us some cool problems to study them in different contexts. And so today's talk is basically studying about a particular type of bacteria, and this is this bacteria I will be talking about. Okay, so as I said that I would like to talk about this bacteria called Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and the kind of motion that you saw in the last video on the last slide. This was called as the twitching motility, and so this is seen in many bacteria, but we are particularly interested in this Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and so these bacteria moves on surfaces, 2D surfaces, say on the human skin or internal organs and so on. So this motion occurs by extending what are known as some polymeric structure called as pili, and they adhere it to the surface, and then they start retracting so that the cell body basically moves forward. So there are several pili which are involved in this motion, and it basically leads to what is known, what we call a stochastic tug of war in 2 dimensions. So I will explain about this in detail in the next slide. But on this slide, if you see this figure, at the center there is this yellow blob, right? So that is basically this bacterial cell body, and all these filaments which are coming out of the cell body, these are called as pili, and a pilus for singular. And these are polymeric structures. So they are extending from the bacterial body, and they extend and they attach themselves on the surface of where this bacteria wants to move. So if you consider a wild type bacteria, there are about, on an average, 7 pili present, and average length of this pili is about 1 micrometer. And even in this figure, if you see, you see that there are several pili in one direction on top. But it's not so. If you take different photographs and look at several photographs, these pili are kind of distributed evenly along all possible directions. So this is in this particular figure only you see that they are coming out of the top. But in general, it's they are everywhere on the cell body. And one thing to note, that only this pili which are attached to the surface are involved in the motion. There can be some pili which are detached and they are kind of hanging in air, but unless they detach to the surface, they are not involved in the motion. Only attached pili are involved. Okay, so it's very interesting to know that so this has been confirmed completely experimentally from a group of Veronika Meyer in University of Cologne, who is my collaborator, and they produce each pilus can produce forces of the order of 100 piconewton, which is huge as compared to other forces at that scale, and it's rather the strongest motor or force that you can get in this kind of motors. So there are a lot of experiments have been performed to see if this motion is persistent. So for example, E. coli, Escherichia coli, if you know, it has what is known as chemotaxis, right? So if you put this bacteria in a chemical gradient, it will go in the direction of the chemical, in the direction of the chemical gradient. Okay, so it can detect where the chemical gradient is higher and it will go in that direction. However, this Neisseria gonorrhoeae does not have this chemotaxis gene, right? So if you put this bacteria and if it just keeps on doing a random walk, it will be impossible for it to survive, right? So there has to be some kind of a persistence, as we saw in case of E. coli, where they do this small random walk and then suddenly go in one direction or in a directed motion. But for that, they can detect a gradient. But in case of Neisseria gonorrhoeae, they cannot detect a gradient because they don't have this chemotaxis gene. So there must be some other way of having some kind of a directed motion and not completely a random motion in terms of like Brownian motion. And so these experiments were done, and they showed that these bacteria indeed have a directed or a persistent time. And for a wild type bacteria, this persistent time can be of the order of few seconds. Now, this experimentalist can actually mutate these bacteria. And as I said earlier, that this wild type bacteria has only on average 7 pili, but you can mutate them, and the mutants can actually grow more or less number of pili. And it was also seen that this persistent time as compared to the wild type bacteria increases if the average pili are larger than the wild type, and it decreases if the average pili is less than the wild type bacteria. And this observation can be seen in the paper which I have given in the right lower corner. So if you search this, you should be able to find. So what it means is that several pili are actually involved in the motion of this bacteria. And So the force required if you want to detach a pilus from the, as I said, that the force generated by this pilus is 100 piconewton. The force required by this pilus to detach it from the surface is of the order of 10 piconewtons. So there is a huge misbalance between the force it can generate and with the with which it can be detached from the surface. So on the left hand side figure, you can see what happens actually. So this is a cell body, and a monomer called pil E, and hence the name pili or pili comes and it attaches to this polymer, and this is how one by one this polymer or pilus basically extends. As it extends, after a while it attaches it to the surface. If you see left figure lower, it attaches it to the surface. Then some other motor comes into the picture, pil T, and it starts taking out this monomer by monomer, such that this length of this pilus actually reduces, or it retracts. That's what we call, and there is an overall movement of the cell body from let's say by an amount delta, as can be seen in the figure. So if you see the figure, a random kind of a graph which is drawn on the right hand side lower, this is basically an experimental trajectory of this bacteria, which can be found out by using a microscope and tracking this bacteria when it's moving. And you can see that it's quite different from a random walk. A random walk will be completely random, but there are certain patches over here where you see this bacteria at least go on an average in one direction as compared to a completely random motion. And all this analysis by these people were done using this several of these trajectories for wild type as well as this bacteria. Okay, so in this slide, I will discuss how we model this twitching motility. So the twitching motility is the bacteria is basically this in this figure A, if you see this blue circle, that is the bacterial body, and this green lines which are coming out of it are basically this pili and or pili, and they produce they are attached at those points, and they start retracting. And what happens is that you will see that obviously in this figure there are 4 pili in let's say 7 o'clock direction, and there are only 2 pili in 2 o'clock direction, right? So obviously the force balance is such that there is a larger force in the 7 or 8 o'clock direction, so the bacteria will basically move in that direction. And after a while, what will happen is that the cell body, as I told earlier, will move forward, and it will be compensated by the change of lengths of these 4 pili. So in this case, they will reduce the lengths, and because the bacteria moves towards 8 o'clock direction, and the pili which are in the opposite direction of the motion, they will elongate. But this elongation is very rare, because even a slight force of the order of 10 piconewtons will detach them from the surface, and most of the times you will see that only the attached pili which are there, and in the opposite direction there are very few pili which are attached. They can be present hanging in the air, but not contributing to the motion or force balance. So this is why we call this twitching motility as the 2D stochastic tug of war. So why stochastic? Because there are several stochastic processes which are going on. So one of them is the creation of the new pilus, right? So if a new pilus is created at let's say with some rate, the force balance changes, right? Because now instead of having let's say 4 or 5 pili, you have 7 pili which are trying to move the bacteria in their own direction, and that's why it's a stochastic process. As well as this detachment and attachment rates of this newly created pilus or existing pilus is also a stochastic process. You cannot determine when and where this pilus will attach or reattach or whatever. So that is again a stochastic. As soon as a new pilus attaches or gets created, the force balance changes, and a bacteria can actually change the direction. So figure C here shows you a simulated trajectory of a bacteria, and this is very, very similar to this trajectory what you see experimental trajectory in this figure. Okay, so all the important parameters are known experimentally. So mainly the pilus creation rate is known. In other words, that we know that on an average how much wild type bacteria has 7 pili. So you can adjust your creation rate of a pilus such that on an average you get 7 pili. You can reduce or increase the creation rate to mimic the mutants in the experiments. You also know pilus detachment rate, and as a function of force, you also know the average velocity of the bacterium, which is of the order of 1.5 micrometers per second. And then you also know pilus retraction and elongation velocity as a function of force. In the sense, if I am pulling a pilus with certain force, with which it will retract. Of course, if you pull it with exactly balancing the force, it's something called as stall force, and there will be no retraction, and there will be no motion of the bacteria. But otherwise, you know how this velocity of retraction, etc., is happening. We also know the average step length distribution, and this is how it is calculated. So what you do is you consider a trajectory of this bacteria, and imagine that you are going along this trajectory, and if you change the direction of this trajectory by, let's say, more than 45 degrees, then you say that this trajectory, so the bacteria has changed the direction. And this is how this was, so then you call that the average length between two direction changes is what is known as the step length, and you can get a step length distribution from these trajectories, and they plotted it, and it turns out that the step length distribution is basically an exponential distribution. And we have published this result with using the experimental collaborators in this paper in Nature Communication in 2014. You're invited to see this paper where we talk more about this modeling and experimental techniques, etc. I hope you will. So we'll get to know about this in more details. I haven't put any equations, but all the details are in this paper, and I will not discuss about this. So the take-home message from this slide is that you have several pili which undergo a stochastic kind of attachment, detachment, and creation. But at a time, there might be several pili which are involved, and the force balance basically creates the motion of the bacterial body in such a way that the net displacement of the bacterial body is equally balanced by the retraction or elongation of the contributing pili. So let me go to the next slide. So this is a completely different slide than this. So you can actually look at this picture, like this, by let's say a toffee which is being driven by ants and taken to their nest. Okay, actually this group in, I think, Weizmann Institute or somewhere, or I'm not very sure, they used our model of stochastic tug of war for bacterial motion, which is, I explained it in this slide, to actually model this, right? So you can see that from a microscopic picture, which is of the order of bacterial direction, you can actually use exactly same model that I discussed here for a motion of a macroscopic particle, which is this food item. And whatever happens, so the analogously what this pilus does here, a single ant does here, right? So you will see that this is again a stochastic tug of war, because ants can actually move, detach from this food particle, and you see several very interesting similarities between our model and their model. So I thought that this is an interesting fact, and that paper you can also find as given in this reference. Anyway, so I will shift to something a little different, and then I will try to connect whatever I talked about earlier and this second part of the thing of my talk. So in Feynman Lectures Volume 1, Chapter 46, Feynman discusses a beautiful model of Ratchet and Paul, where he has two containers, and one of them has a symmetric tooth, okay, and symmetric teeth like a wheel, and there is a Paul which tries to hinder the motion of this Ratchet, this asymmetric wheel called as Ratchet, in one direction, right? So in several gears, etc., you have seen this kind of ratchet thing. And what he shows is that because if there is an asymmetry between the temperatures between this Ratchet box and the one which is symmetric in the other box with temperature T1, these are called as vents, which are symmetric. They are free to move in any direction, clockwise or anti-clockwise. Then because of the temperature difference, you can convert this into an engine, and you can actually lift or lift or lower this mass which is tied to the shaft, joining the Ratchet and the vents. Okay, so this is again a beautiful chapter everybody should read, how he explains. It turns out, however, that the Feynman, whatever the analysis he does, he shows that the efficiency of this engine can actually reach Carnot efficiency, and that's actually a wrong statement. And the analysis what Feynman did is wrong, and there are several papers criticizing this analysis and giving you the correct answer. So this is something called as the Feynman's Ratchet and Paul machine, and looking at it like this, or motivated by this, as well as motivated by the motion of molecular motors, kinesin and dynein on microtubules, there were several interesting theoretical as well as experimental facts of what are known as Brownian ratchets were proposed. So Brownian ratchets is again a Brownian particle which is placed in an asymmetric potential, and then this potential is periodically switched on and off, as you can see over here. So when the particles, when the potential is switched on, the particles will try to go in the minimum of that potential. Remember, this potential is not symmetric, it's asymmetric, and when it is switched off, these particles will basically do a Brownian motion, and when again it's switched on, the particles will tend to go to the minimum of the particle. And if this was just Brownian particles, or Brownian particles in a constant asymmetric potential, then this would have been a equilibrium process and there will be no net current. But because of the flashing of this ratchet, switching it on and off, what happens is that you will get a net direction of these particles. In this case, they will go towards left, depending on the asymmetry which is involved. So what you do this experiment and try to find out what kind of mean displacement you will have, and you will see that in case of flashing ratchet, mean displacement will be non-zero. If this was a equilibrium situation, you will see that average motion of a Brownian particle in a constant field, in a constant potential will be zero. But because of this switching on and off, this system is driven into non-equilibrium. It goes into non-equilibrium. It's a non-equilibrium system called as driven system, and hence the average displacement in non-zero. So I have made this clear here that non-equilibrium system produces net direction. Okay. So what we do now is we take our bacteria, which is basically a non-equilibrium system. Remember, this bacteria uses some kind of a chemical or food to do their processes, right? So this bacteria, whenever you are performing an experiment, they need to be put on an agar-agar solution or whatever. The biologists will be able to tell me more about it. And they use this food to do their motion and so on. Right, so this bacteria is a very, very non-equilibrium system, unlike a Brownian motion, which is a very equilibrium system. So what we do is we take these bacteria and we put them on a corrugated channel, as can be seen over here. So this corrugated channel actually mimics this potential, which is asymmetric potential, and this corrugated channel is also, as you can see, is asymmetric. Okay, so here in this case, the system was made non-equilibrium because you switch this on and off, this potential switch on and off. But here we cannot really switch on and off potential because of this two-dimensional structure. And what we do is that we put them in an asymmetric potential like this, or a corrugated channel, which is known as asymmetric corrugated channel. So that mimics this asymmetry in this potential, and the non-equilibrium nature basically comes because of the non-equilibrium motion of the active particle or this bacteria, right? The motion of the bacteria is a non-equilibrium quantity. Here, remember, the non-equilibriumness came because of the switching on and off of this potential, and the Brownian particles were completely passive, or they did not use any energy as such. So the net gain of energy by the Brownian particle is basically matched by the loss of energy to the medium. But that's not the case in case of bacteria. They use this energy to propel themselves in directional manner. Okay, so now we want to see whether if we put this active system, this is so-called active system, bacteria or Janus particles, into this asymmetric corrugated channel, whether we also see a directed motion, as we will see in case of a flashing ratchet. Okay, and so activity is basically a non-equilibrium, and hence this system is non-equilibrium. And you have a non-equilibrium system and an asymmetry, which exactly basically mimics this Brownian ratchet. But the non-equilibriumness and asymmetry comes from a completely different context in both cases. So what we do again is calculate the average motion. So remember, if this was just a symmetric potential, there will be no net motion in a particular direction. But what we see here, because of the asymmetry and non-equilibriumness, that you actually get a symmetric motion. Okay, so if you plot average x, that is because the asymmetry, we are looking at the motion in x direction. The asymmetry is in minus x direction. That's why you see that on an average, you actually see this particle moving in a given direction. And so this pilus creation rate, as I said earlier, is basically mimics the number of pili. And as you keep on increasing the number of pili, the persistent motion of this bacteria basically increases. And you see that more and more persistent motion of this bacteria occurs. And you can actually rectify the motion of the bacterium in this fashion, and the as compared to, let's say, a usual free particle, the persistent time increases almost 4 or 5 times as compared to when they are put in this asymmetric channel. So here we also calculate mean square displacement of this bacteria, and it's basically given by this. And this mean square displacement looks like some t to the power beta, where beta is some exponent. And what you see for some time, let's say of the order of 10 seconds, you see that the motion is ballistic. So bacteria is actually going in a straight direction, following kind of a Newton's law. And then the motion becomes random. And there is a long crossover from this ballistic to random behavior. And you can actually tune the number the time for which it does this the ballistic motion depending on the creation rate. So if you increase the creation rate, that mimics the average number of pili will be more, and you will basically will increase the persistent time as compared to when you put this bacteria into this corrugated channel, and as compared to the motion of the bacteria when this corrugated channel is not present. Okay, so this what we plot is the probability of finding the bacterium in a given cell of a channel. Okay, and so this is a density plot, and on A and B basically plot this density plots, and you will see that most of the times bacteria tend to be at the boundary, and in between the probability of a bacteria is very low. So we can basically see that this actually is a boundary driven phenomena. And as you can see over in this figure as well, that most of the times bacteria tend to be near the boundary, and that's why this bacteria tends to feel the corrugation in this channel and try to move along this channel, and hence you basically see whatever the directed motion that you see in this figure. And this was actually a very nice figure. And just to note that this work was done by my PhD student Konak Bisht, who has finished his PhD and moving to Denmark for a postdoc. He actually produced these figures, and these figures have been selected for this PRE Kaleidoscope for the artistic nature of those figures. So it's a nice thing to know. So bacteria with largest persistent length spends more time at the boundaries, and hence the rectification actually happens, or a rectification is a boundary effect. Then you can look at different phenomena or the current, which is defined in this fashion, which is kind of very similar to what we had proposed here as average displacement, but at long time. And you see that the current of this particle, as you keep on increasing the creation rate, increases, and then it saturates, because then it will keep on basically hitting the boundary in the same cell for several number of times as the length increases, and it will not be able to go, and hence it has to saturate at some point of time, and that's why it saturates. Other things you can see is basically that this current as a function of different parameters. So if you look at this corrugated channel, there is basically the different parameters that you can use. Basically the W max, which is the maximum height of this channel, and W min, which is the minimum height of this channel. And then what you can look at is this current as a function of these parameters. And what can be seen is that you can actually find such parameters where the current becomes maximum. So you can choose optimal parameters where the directed motion is basically it's the highest, and then it decreases for all the physical reasons and so on. And actually here we compare two models where there is an actual stochastic tug of war, very detailed model that I discussed about earlier, and another model is where I have discussed it here, which is very similar to the Pearson walk that I talked about earlier, where a particle takes a step which is actually can be a random of random length, and it can choose a direction between 0 to pi uniformly, right? So it's very similar to the Pearson walk. So this is what we call a run and tumble like motion, and we compare this model with the detail. Yeah, I will finish in one.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So I'm almost done. So we compare two models, and they basically give a very similar results, but qualitatively the detailed model obviously gives much more quantitatively much more detailed results as compared to a coarse-grained model of Pearson walk. Okay, so in summary, we have studied a rectification of bacteria in corrugated channels using two models, one detailed model of tug of war and run and tumble. As compared to earlier models, which required hydrodynamic interactions between the particles and the boundaries. But here, just with steric interaction, just because of the non-equilibriumness and asymmetry in the corrugated channel, we could see a rectification of this bacteria, which is an interesting result. Asymmetry of the channel obviously plays a very important role, and you can choose the channel parameters such that the transport is optimized. And qualitative features between these two models is very same, but quantitatively, obviously, the detailed tug of war model gives a very good results as compared to the coarse-grained model. Okay, so I will stop here, and I hope I haven't overshot the time. And if I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Marathe. Let us see if the audience have any questions.
So shall I stop sharing or?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Marathe. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Dipjyoti.
Okay.
So yeah, my question is actually in the first part of your talk where you talked about that nature communication paper. So all these the nature communication paper that you talked about.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So those experiments and the modeling, I guess, on a single bacteria, right? Is it?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just wondering, like, what would be like if I put a lot of bacteria together in close vicinity?
We actually, with Konak, so this is the latest model. That's why I discussed this, and I wanted to connect it. But if you see, like in 2017, we have published a paper where we actually take these bacteria and see how the biofilms are formed. Okay, so of course these bacteria interact, and this pili, for example, it's not only used for just the motion, but several activities like so they can actually transfer genetic material from one bacteria to the other using this pili. So there are the motion is not the only function of this pili. Okay, so there are other functions which this form, and as you remember, as you also see that this pili can also form bacterial colonies, because these bacteria come together, and this is how the infection is spread, right? So in this paper, look at the publication.
So, is there any known report about this pili creation rate, or the average pili? Does it depend on the density? Like if I say slowly increase the density, yes.
It's a good question. I actually don't know about this bacteria, but there has been an interesting paper, I think in 2017 or 18 in Science, where they use this other bacteria which also has this this bacteria is called as P. aeruginosa or something. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly. So that bacteria actually produces pili only at one pole. It's a rod-shaped bacteria, and what happens is that this bacteria basically moves using this pili. When the density is low, this bacteria is like, it is touching it's like flat on the surface, right? And then what happens is that when you increase the number of bacteria or increase the density, what happens is this bacteria actually stands up, right? So because of this standing up, what happens is that now they have enough space to move around, and if you look at the average pili, then those numbers are very similar to when this bacteria in the case of low density. But in this case, this bacteria actually don't know what happens if you increase the density. I would see that there will not be a very appreciable change in number of pili. That's what I guess.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other question?
Yes, sir. There is another question.
Okay.
From Tanmay.
Okay.
He has asked, what determines the change of force at different pili? How can we know its exact value?
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm repeating the question. What
Yeah.
determines the change of force at different pili? And how can we know its exact value?
Okay. So I will go back to my slides. Okay. So this, can you see the figure? This figure? Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So what you do is the following. So that if the retraction velocity of this pilus depends on the force it experiences. Okay. So consider this is as the force balance. So of this nature. So you are standing and you have been pulled by, let's say, 6 or 7 strings in different directions, right? So I can find out the force by just looking at the force balance, and the equation I use is nothing but the underdamped, let's say, Langevin kind of equation. So at a time, let's say, I balance the frictional force with the force balance. So something like gamma x dot, where gamma is the friction, Stokes friction, because this particle or the bacteria is on the surface, and is equal to the sum of the forces with which you are experiencing, right? And you have to solve this equation depending on this on the forces, and this sum over the forces only contains the pili which are attached to the surface, right? Okay, so now once you know the forces, each force acting on the pili, so you have to again use the fact that given a force, I know with which velocity it will retract. So now I have two information. I know the forces acting or the velocity with which this pili are retracting, and with that velocity, I know with which force it needs to be, it must be acting, right? So I have this information, and using this information, I can solve these equations. So these are Newton's equation that I need to solve, but these are not deterministic system, because this number of forces in this sum on the right hand side is changing at all the times. And at every time you will have to calculate this, go back to your velocities, calculate this, the forces, and put this in the equation and solve them for the velocity of the bacteria. I hope, is this clear?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
pretty much clear. I hope
Okay.
Tanmay would be grateful to you. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
since we are running out of time, I think there is no more questions for you. If you have any questions, please ask in the chat box. Dr. Marathi would be happy to answer them. Okay.